This is a precious video of hunting a porcupine. To pinpoint its location, the woman squeezed into a rock crevice despite feeling uncomfortable. Once she confirmed the porcupine was inside, she quickly circled around and took a shot. Spotting the bloodstains, she knew it was secured. Soon after, she hauled the porcupine up, pondering the best way to cook it for maximum flavor. It's now day 51 of the challenge. The camera moves to Roland, who plans to explore today. She keeps hearing squirrels calling. Roland wonders where the squirrels find their food. She hopes to discover their stash, which should be well stocked for winter. She grabs an axe and chops down the tree, hoping to catch the squirrels too. Quickly! Roland chops down the tree, revealing a bounty of food. Sadly, the squirrels had already fled, leaving behind their hoarded stash. She tearfully gathers everything, marveling at nature's bounty, though it's tough on the squirrels. Roland can't wait to taste it. The leftover part of the ox hide from before can be used to stuff mushrooms. She cuts off the nose and lip parts, then wraps them with wire. And just like that, a storage pouch is done. In the wild, you need to think smart and use what you have. That's how you improve your situation. Roland wishes the squirrels would be smart enough to come over, undress, and hop into the pot. With mushrooms, it would be a tasty meal. This ox hide is really being put to good use by Roland. If she could get another one, she could even make some toys to bring back for the kids. It's been a long time since she stayed in the wild alone for so long. Her mood is better than she imagined. What do you think of this ox hide pouch? Guaranteed 100% genuine ox hide, handmade. I recommend everyone get one. Now she can gather and store mushrooms. Maybe there are more squirrels around. Hopefully, she can find their stash next time. The next harvest could be more bountiful. It's now day 52 of the challenge. The camera moves to Killian. He's gathered a good amount of firewood, but it still seems insufficient. It might only last until midnight. While Killian is busy tidying up the firewood, he suddenly sees something approaching. He's not sure what it is. He immediately goes to check. The next second, you see Killian walking over. I must admit, her attitude is truly remarkable. She even finds time to take a nap. She really loves her coat. Feels like she's wrapped in a big quilt. Perfect for someone who hates the cold. After all, local herders crafted it from reindeer skin. When you walk by the fire, you can even smell the meat. It's cozier than anything you find in a store. It's almost night again. Time to scout for some food. Survival here is getting tougher by the day. Surviving here is becoming more and more challenging. Most people wouldn't last this long. Carrie's traps have nearly all been ruined by the snow. We can't rely on catching rabbits. We'll need to reset all the traps. No rabbit tracks around here. They've probably moved to another area. Now we can only try our luck. For now, I know of a porcupine den. I always check it when I walk by. I wasn't sure if the porcupine would return, just when I thought I'd come back empty-handed again. I was shocked to see the porcupine right under the carcass. The nearby tree bark was all chewed up by it. If we set the trap here, this pig will definitely try to escape. I can probably catch the porcupine myself. This is much better than a rabbit. I won't starve for the next week. This should be the porcupine's regular route. Wedge this tree into the gap here. The porcupine will surely get trapped. We'll check back tomorrow to see if it worked. It's snowing hard again, so I'll head back to the shelter. Killian's lost a lot of weight since he got here. He's lost a lot of weight. Luckily, he's still got some muscle left. Surviving in the wild really does build you up. If the food here were more plentiful, my biceps would be even bigger. After flexing for the camera, it's back to ice fishing. Killian is eager to get started. He wondered how much he could catch today, thinking the other contestant spots probably hadn't frozen over yet. The crew had picked a great location. It's still the same spot. Once I clear the spruce branches, I can drop the fishing line into the hole. The only issue is the long walk, and I'm really worried about frostbite. Today hasn't been lucky. I've been sitting here for hours. Jillian's dream is to compete in the Olympics. She started in gymnastics. Later, a back injury forced her to switch to swimming, where she excelled until more injuries led to her retirement. Joining this survival challenge is awesome. It'd be even better with my husband. I'd feel more confident about finishing. This is like my own Olympics. I need to at least win a medal. Suddenly, I felt something tugging. Killian immediately pulled hard. It was even bigger than he imagined. He couldn't get the fish out. It's a real shame. That fish could have fed him for nearly a week. His spirits plummeted immediately. His enthusiasm seems to have vanished. Unsure when he'll catch another fish, he wishes he could just dive in and grab it. The fish was enormous. The more Killian dwells on it, the worse he feels. He's lost his drive to fish. Now he just wants to go back and lie down to rest. It's the 53rd day of the challenge, and Amos is bored. He crafted some percussion instruments. Though he's unsure what he's hitting, his expression shows he's having fun. Amos really likes music, especially when surviving alone in the wild. It helps lift his spirits. He hasn't fished in ages, and the smoked fish in the shelter will only last about another week. Amos is quite anxious, but given the current weather and environment, it's really hard to get enough food. If this continues, his body won't hold out until the end. What worries him most are the wolves. If he gets more food, the shelter might not keep them out. Should he hunt wolves for food? He's curious if wolf meat tastes like dog. Is it similar to dog meat? If possible, Amos wants to stay by the fire all the time. If only the lake would freeze over sooner. He might be able to ice fish for food. There's no use worrying now. He polished the metal pieces he found into hooks. With those, he won't have to worry about losing the fish. He just needs some bait, which he'll find once the lake freezes. He hopes to catch a big fish. It's the 54th day of the challenge. He woke up feeling pretty good today. The shelter is so cozy, he doesn't want to leave, but the thought of catching a porcupine lifts his spirits. His spirits lift. Eagerly, he rushes out to check. Each night, he dreams of delicious food, making his stomach rumble. Desperate for porcupine meat, he grabs his weapon and heads to the trap. He expected it to be cold, but not this freezing. His exposed skin shivers as he wonders how the others are coping. If I don't catch anything today, I might just quit and go home. Why didn't they choose to do this in the summer? Soon, Roland arrived at the porcupine's den. His feelings were quite mixed. The traps had no effect at all. The porcupine had wrecked the traps, and Roland had no idea where it went. He could only climb up and hope for the best. He hoped the porcupine was still inside. Fortunately, Roland could squeeze in to check. The porcupine likely didn't expect someone to follow. Once Roland was inside, he spotted the porcupine and swiftly exited to gear up for the hunt. The good news was the porcupine was resting there. The bad news was it was under a crevice. Even if he managed to shoot it with an arrow, getting the meat would be tough. He needed to check the other side, where some rock caves gave him hope. The porcupine was trickier than he expected. When he went down, it darted to the other side. He had to try from above. He shot an arrow at the porcupine, which darted back to the rock crevice. Roland jumped down to track it. Noticing the tracks on the rocks, he realized it hadn't gone far. He just needed to wait for it to bleed out. The challenge was retrieving it. He reached in, and luckily, his arms were long enough. After some effort, he finally pulled out the porcupine. It was quite a big one, enough to last him more than a week. He was in a great mood. It proved he had some skills. Facing the porcupine, he felt completely at ease. His confidence in finishing the 100-day challenge soared. Roland was so thrilled he was speechless. The camera then turned to Amos, who was watching the weather, hoping the lake would freeze soon. But the lake hadn't frozen much. He worried he might miss out on ice fishing. Music was his only comfort. Despite his nearly frozen fingers, he couldn't stop playing. It was too difficult to put down, and there wasn't much else to do. His food supplies were almost gone, and even the firewood was running out. If this continued, his body might not last the week. He was in dire need of food and decided to try fishing by the shore, hoping his handmade hooks would be effective. Amos found the winter environment very challenging. He had no experience with it, and the mental pressure was immense. He cast his line into the water, hoping a catch would lift his spirits and boost his confidence to finish the challenge. Although there are many people better than me, only a few were selected, so I need to try harder. I aim to win the prize money and celebrate at home. I don't know about the other contestants, but Amos here might not see the end of the competition. He probably won't catch any fish by the end. He doesn't even know how long he's been fishing here. So far, no fish have bitten. Have they all gone to the deep sea to stay warm? Suddenly, he feels a tug on the line. Amos quickly pulls harder, but the fish has already escaped. The good news is, there are still fish around. Before it gets away, he quickly casts the hook again. These fish are smarter than he expected. Amos keeps trying until nightfall without success. He's feeling really down and heads back to his shelter to rest. All the food in the shelter is gone, with no chance to replenish. Amos doesn't know how much longer he can hold on. It's time to think about going home. Meanwhile, Cowley is busy dealing with a porcupine. He hasn't seen this much fat in a long time. His body really needs it, and he feels he can keep going, considering the lake hasn't frozen over yet. He can't fish on the ice. Luckily, with this porcupine meat, he can last a bit longer. What Cowley didn't expect was the porcupine's organs had issues. The liver was worse than he thought, covered in white spots. Does anyone know what's going on? Whether the porcupine was sick or unhealthy, eating this meat is risky. He doesn't know what to do. The organs are definitely off limits, but will it affect the meat? If he doesn't eat, he'll starve. If he does and there's a problem, the show will force him out. Cowley is really torn. Would you risk eating that meat? On day 55 of the challenge, Roland feels it's getting colder outside. Even with enough firewood, Roland worries it won't last through the night. It's so cold that even the stones are frozen. To keep the shelter from collapsing, He has to clear the snow, despite the cold. It also boosts his morale. If he says he doesn't miss his family, it would be a lie. Roland wants to be with them. But given his current situation, he has a strong shot at winning. So, despite the hardships, he must persevere. Winning would improve my family's life. Now, let's check on Jillian. He also prefers staying in during this cold weather. It's better to stay warm and hungry than to freeze outside. Yesterday's ice fishing was tough. Today, I just want to stay in the shelter. There are still some fish left, so I'm not worried about starving. I wonder if the fish tastes better after he rubs his feet. Jillian keeps pushing himself. He thinks he can finish this challenge if he keeps telling himself that daily. Jillian is sure he can do it. I don't know if it's the fish or his feet, but now he has a splitting headache and his body is getting weaker. Jillian's emotions are crumbling once more. With no fish and a pounding headache, he feels this isn't a way to live. He insists it's just the smoke causing his tears, not crying. The faulty chimney fills the shelter with smoke, making it hard for Jillian to keep his eyes open. Roland appears to be faring well. With ample resources, he remains unworried and even feels up to stepping outside to admire the snow. He cleared the snow in the morning, but it piled up again within an hour. He's unsure if the shelter can hold up. He can only increase the fire's heat slightly. On the 56th day, Jillian has been smoked out all night. His vision is blurry, and he's unsure how much longer he can endure. The smoke is wearing him down. He can't just not light the fire. The rabbit traps are completely useless now. He'll collect them later. The day to go home is near. He longs to hug his husband. Jillian only feels somewhat better when outside. It would be best if he could make a small mistake and go home. However, while collecting the traps, he didn't see anything. Now, he can only record the scenery. It'll make a nice keepsake when he gets back. Surviving in the wild isn't easy. Jillian starts crying again. It's day 57, and Jillian is conflicted about leaving. He feels he's been here long enough. His husband must be missing him terribly. He's lost count of how many times he's cried. The pressure is overwhelming. It's almost breaking him down. Both physically and mentally, it's taken a huge toll. Most people probably couldn't last a week. As he speaks, Jillian begins to cry once more. He's unsure of the remaining contestants, but knows he's nearing his limit. He can only manage one day at a time. On the 58th day, Amos is starving and hoping the lake will freeze. But the reality is harsh. The ice won't get thick enough no matter how cold it gets. He has to stay in his shelter to keep warm. He pondered the right time to leave. After careful thought, Amos chose to quit. He assumed the crew would handle the cleanup. Unexpectedly, the shelter had its own plans and caught fire. Amos swore it was an accident. It wasn't planned. Amos couldn't extinguish the fire and had to evacuate. Ultimately, he had no choice but to leave. Luckily, he evacuated everything safely. Hopefully, Amos will return. He truly enhances the show. He was aware of the cameras. Had Amos not quit, the crew would have enjoyed watching him continue. Among the remaining contestants, I think Roland has the best chance of completing the challenge.